Hey everyone, I'm Harold and I'm visually impaired. Today I'd like to talk about the conditions I suffer from. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this was for you to get to know me better and know who your information is coming from. At the same time, in that sense, I wanted you to know that it's coming from me. It's coming from someone who has walked a mile in your shoes. It's someone who has dealt with the same roadblocks. It's someone who has walked a very similar path as you. It's someone who suffers very similar conditions as you do. I feel like in life it's hard to take advice from someone unless they've actually lived it. One of the pet peeve of mine sometimes is when people say, "Oh, I understand. Oh, I get it," but you really don't. You don't understand unless you've actually had to live it. There's no harsher teacher than life, and life's experiences just can't make up for false knowledge. It can't make up for someone just trying to give advice or trying to help in a situation. And I'm not faulting people for that. Please know that. I usually when people says that they're trying to be very they're being very empathetic. They're just trying to help for the most part. So I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I'm just saying for these types of things, for the tricks and tips and education and awareness I spread on this channel, it's coming from someone who has been right there with you, has gone through all of it with you, just like you have, or in very similar ways. So I'm going to get into this. And another thing I wanted to point out is I have my notes right here, and you might see me look away or look down so I can see what I'm looking at because I write my bullet points down in bigger print so I can see them. I'm mentioning this because, as you'll notice as you watch these videos, they're all shot in one continuous take. I'm not cutting anything away. I'm being me. I'm not trying to hide anything as much as I would like to, meaning that I am not comfortable by any means in front of this camera speaking to everyone. I'm taking a bright spotlight and I'm shining it down on my biggest insecurity, my visual impairment. It's been my biggest insecurity my whole life. But I am very willing to do that in the sake of spreading education, hope, love, and positivity. So just please know this comes directly from my heart because nothing about this is easy. And everyone's different. Some people might be more comfortable with it. I'm very self-conscious. It's how I am. But I don't mind doing it for the sake of positivity. So I don't plan on editing or cutting down any videos in the near future just because I have to do little things like look closer at the page, so my head might go off screen sometimes. But you're getting me. You're getting exactly who I am and what I do when I'm off camera, the things I have to do, or techniques that I use to go about my day-to-day life. So I'm gonna get into this. Here's the laundry list of conditions that I suffer from. The first one I'm gonna go into is retinal detachment. I first had my first retinal detachment. First of all, let me before I go into that, actually, let me explain what a retinal detachment is if you've never gone through it. A retinal detachment is basically your retina is like a wall of cells in the back of your eye. The best way I describe it to people, instead of trying to Google a medical term for it, is I always go with what my original surgeon said to me once to describe it to me. He said that your retina, he said, picture uh, Picture paper on a wall. Picture wallpaper. So when a retina detaches, it basically just peels right off. That's the most simplistic way it was ever explained to me, and that's how I explain it to anyone who doesn't know what it is. And I thought that was just an amazing way when he described it to me like that, because I understood immediately. Because when it first happened to me, I didn't know what it was. I don't even think I had heard of it at the time. So, and there's different, you can have retinal tears, retina detachments, which I've had both. So, what happened to me in August of 2011? I used to do pro wrestling off and on. I did it from 2004 to 2011. I didn't do anything major. I had a few matches, in front of some crowds. It was cool and it was fun, but it's nothing I really, it wasn't a big deal. I didn't go far in it. I had got punched in the eye by in an accident in a wrestling drill. I was fine. It hurt, but I was fine. I went about the training like I normally would. Everything was fine. I didn't notice anything different. The next day, I'm walking out of a movie theater, and the moment I walk into the lobby, I noticed that my peripheral view was gone. And to describe a few symptoms that people go through, symptoms of a detached retina, and just some. You can have shooting stars, like shooting lights that's going down in front of your vision. The main one is a curtain that goes across your peripheral view. That's a big one. That's a big telltale sign. That's what happened to me. So I didn't know what it was, and I didn't think anything of it. I wore contacts at the time, and I thought, hey, maybe just I got some dirt in my eye or something like that. So I went home later that night, and I was like, I was gonna take my contacts out, and I figured, all right, once I pop this contact out, my vision's gonna go back to normal. It's just something's dirt or whatever, something flew in my eye. I took the contact out, and it was still there, the darkness in my peripheral. So I went to bed that night, and this was all wishful thinking, mind you. I was just terrified. I didn't know anything about it. I went to sleep that night just hoping that I was going to wake up and it was all just going to be fine. I woke up and it wasn't fine. It was just the same. So after a couple, tests, we ended up finding a retina specialist. And after the examination, he discovered that my retina had not only detached, but it had a giant tear in it. A giant tear is how he described it. He said in all his years of being a retina surgeon, it was the worst case he had seen. Don't get me wrong, I could have done without him saying that. But the long and the short of it, over the next year and a half, I went through four different surgeries, and they couldn't repair it, unfortunately. The third surgery I went through is what is called a scleral buckle surgery. And it's just like a belt or band that's in my eye, and it holds the retina flat. And they put silicone oil in it to seal up the tear. So there's no vision in my left eye. There is vision there because of the retina, but I can't see anything. Oh, excuse me, because my vision is blocked by the silicone oil. So that's how it happened to me the first time. So there's no vision there. Fast forward from 2011 to 2019. Now, mind you, as I said, the first one was a wrestling accident that was due to trauma. Retinal detachments, they don't always happen, because of trauma. They can just happen. I was playing cards with a friend at the time, just not doing anything active. I'm randomly sitting at a table playing cards, and all of a sudden I started noticing a curtain going across my vision. And I knew right away what it was. I immediately knew what it was. Thankfully, an emergency examination, they did confirm it was a detached retina. I was in surgery immediately. I think it was within maybe 24 to 48 hours. So thankfully, they were able to repair that. That's the retina stuff I've gone through. I want to talk about Excuse me just for a second. I want to talk about. So okay, so I think I got a little ahead of myself. I'm looking through my notes here, and sorry for the long pause. As I said, I struggle with this. I'm struggling to read it, even though it's big print. But I'm not hiding anything either. But you guys can let me know in the future if like my pauses get a little too excessive. I can always cut it down if I don't mind doing that. I think I just kind of do it just to show you all that this is very much me when you see me. It's the raw package. I'm not hiding anything from anyone. So this is the next thing I wanted to touch on. Uh, I go through a lot of anxiety. My biggest fear in life is going blind. And of course, anyone who's had these issues, I'm sure it's a very, very natural fear. But I go through anxiety always. My every day I wake up just hoping I don't go blind. That's a very scary existence. It's very scary, and it's rough. It's hard, going from one day or the other. Or you have to. There's certain things you don't do. Like there's certain a lot of activities that I can't do anymore. I can't do anything that's full contact. I can't do roller coasters anymore, just with the fears I have of possibly detaching a retina again. So there's different sacrifices you have to make in life when these things happen. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's worth it. I miss out on some fun stuff, but I'd rather have my what little vision I have left. So it's by all means it's a fair trade off. One of the things I want to discuss is, and this is for the people who has suffered retinal detachments. And I know a lot of people does it because I've questioned different people and they said it's very normal. I can tell you something I do, and I believe it's a byproduct of detached retinas. One of the things I do a lot every day, and I do it. I don't know how often I do it. Some days are more severe than others, but I have a constant habit of checking my peripheral view. Sometimes if I'm very cognizant of it, I try to not do it as much. It's at a certain point I started doing it out of fear, and then I think it was just habit forming because I did it so often. But it's a lot. It weighs on you mentally because there are days that if I'm not cognizant that I do it so often, I'm not exaggerating this number. There are days where I'll probably check my peripheral view 300 times, and that's very hard. It gets very depressing, and it just weighs on you so much. And some days I wish I could stop doing it, but I am working on it. It's a work in progress. It is something I'm trying to do. It's just I just of course everyone who's gone through this, I'm sure their biggest thing is they can just pray that you don't detach a retina or pray that you don't go blind. But I think just subconsciously the fear is always there, and it's not fun. It's not fun. Uh, so all right, that's the first thing I wanted to cover of the things I go through, the conditions I suffer from. Detached retinas was number one. The second thing I want to get into is in 2021, June of 2021. I went to bed one night. My vision was fine in the one eye. I could see clearly. I could see normally. I woke up the next morning and there was a vision obstruction right in the center of my vision, right in my center field. And it was a color, the only way I know how to describe it to people is it was a colorful cloud of almost glittery light, but you couldn't see through it. It wasn't transparent, but that's the best way I know how to describe it. So I had everything checked. I'll get into that, but over the next year, eventually, or I'm sorry, not over the next year, but probably a couple months after that, maybe even just a month after that, out of the blue, that white sparkly cloud turned into a colorful cloud. It just started turning different colors, very bright colors, and that obstructed my vision a little more. because it still wasn't fun, obviously, with just a white cloud, but something about colors, it gets very distracting sometimes. It gets in the way. Uh, so one of the things I think caused it is, and I'm going to talk about here in a minute once I get through these notes. Once I'm going to talk about what everything I've gone through, all the tests I've gone through, to kind of narrow things down. I think, and I gotta watch how I phrase this because I'm not trying to get this video flagged for using certain words. I think it was the Rona that caused it. It's the only thing, it's the only logical answer I can come up with. So when I went to bed that night, my vision was just fine. I woke up the next morning, but I woke up really sick. Like I was extremely sick. And I went to an urgent care, and I do believe I was misdiagnosed because they didn't give me I almost did it. Sorry. They did not administer a Rona test. They just did like just a couple generic tests, and I can't even remember what they said it was. It was like a strep throat or something like that. I don't think it was. I do think I was positive for what I mentioned before, but it was. I never got tested for it, and that's what I do believe the manner. That's the manner in which caused my vision obstruction was that sickness because I was sicker than I had ever been that I had ever been in my life. And some of the symptoms I go through with this is I'm still learning to this day. I'm still learning about the vision obstruction because my vision can go from bad to worse depending on the situation I'm in, depending on the lighting. It just varies. Sometimes if I'm doing something where I need to see like my notes, for example, the light has to be turned up very bright. If it's in a darker area, I can't see the words. If I go outside and it's bright, like it's sunlight, it's very bright out, my vision drops dramatically where I can't see much, and I actually need the assistance of someone when I'm outside. If it's funny enough, if it's like a gloomy day, the sun's just not out, and it looks like something from, like looks like a sky from an Edgar Allan Poe poem. My vision is better, and I see a lot better outside, and I don't need the assistance of someone. So it's weird. There's a lot of different symptoms I go through, and to this day, I'm still learning new things because it's very confusing because I don't know what it is. So, and if anyone has had any similar symptoms of that, by the way, please feel free to, comment on anything or because, any feedback is, I value. Hey guys, sorry. I just kind of did something that I had to contradict myself on that I said earlier. I said I wasn't going to cut away. But in that moment, so as I was just talking to you, I was going through my notes and I realized that they were out of order and a couple of them were backwards. And I didn't want to sit here with dead air just rearranging them. So my apologies for that. But that'll be the only cutaway in this video. I just had to, it took me a couple minutes, but we're there. We're back. So the next thing I want to discuss is I want to go over with you the doctors and the tests I've gone through to have this vision obstruction looked at because I've gone through the gamut. I mean, they've put me through a gauntlet of tests. So I've literally seen everyone I feel like I could see or every test I was able to see. And when I go through this, I guarantee there's stuff I'm forgetting or stuff I'm accidentally leaving out. I've gone through so much testing since then, but these are just to name a few of the doctors and the test and things we've rolled out. So I have seen my retina, first of all, my retina specialist, which is my original ones that did my surgeries. So they knew my history. I've seen an optometrist, an ophthalmologist, a neurologist, a neuro-ophthalmologist. I've had just going through the things that's been looked at, the test. I've had my optic nerves checked. I've had MRI scans. I've had CT scans. I've had MRA scans to make sure it wasn't in my blood, to make sure it wasn't vascular or any blood clots that was causing it. I've had blood work to where they check for everything. They check to make sure it wasn't diabetes. I just have so much that I've had done. And here's the thing, this is one of the reasons I'm sharing this with you. Every single test I have had done, every scan I've had done, or every doctor that I've talked to, every single one of them has said, I'm just fine. It's a clean bill of health. And I've said this, and I've told this story to different people like close to me, and they say, one of their answers that's frustrating, and I get it. I know they're not being malicious or anything, but they say, man, if you're getting all these tests come back negative, and you're meeting with all these doctors, and they're all giving you a clean bill of health, man, they said that's a win in my book. Okay, on a normal day, maybe, yeah. But when you have a vision obstruction that has really damaged your eyesight and it's taken a lot of your independence away, you kind of need to know what's going on with you. And it's even more frustrating when you are the only one that can see it. No one else can see it but you. So for this example, no, a clean bill of health or a negative test is not a good thing. At this point, I just need to know what's wrong with me and what's causing it. Even if it's something, obviously, it's not good. Even if it's something that's not fixable, not curable, I just would like an answer at this point. That's been the most frustrating thing about the last year and a half is I'm no better off now than what I was then. I mean, I guess on some level that's not true. It's true and not true. We've been able to narrow so many things out, but I have had, but no one's tried to diagnose anything. But I've had similar people I've spoken to that said, that sickness that I was talking about that has damaged people's eyesight. So I heard, so maybe that's what it is. Who knows? But I feel at this point there's no way to prove it. It's just right now I just feel like I'm stuck in the dark. All right, and so one of the last things I wanted to touch on, that's my visual impairments. Other than also what I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, I've suffered from nystagmus since birth. The last thing I wanted to talk about was I suffer from a condition, and this one's not, it's not a visual impairment, but I still just wanted to put it out there. I suffer from a condition called hemicrania continua, HC for short. Hemicrania continua is defined as headaches that varies in pain, and it happens on one side of the head. Okay. Now, if anyone out there has suffered from hemicrania continua, or even if you don't, let me just kind of, and that was the short definition I just gave. The actual definition is much longer, but that's kind of like the long and the short of it. It's just basically they define it as pretty much a headache that just doesn't stop. It's just each day it just varies in severity. As someone that suffers with that, it's a very rare condition. I don't like it when people call it headaches, and it's okay because if they don't understand it or they don't know, it's not their fault. It's not their fault. I define it as head pain because head pain is very different from a headache. And so the where it happens for me is it happens on the right side of my head. It happens in my temple. Some days are worse than others, like I said. This is the only way I know how to describe it to someone when they ask, is the pain sharp? Is it stabbing? Is it, yada, yada. If you take your knuckle like this and put it in your temple, but grind it in as hard as you can, or at least with, a good amount of force. That's what hemicrania continua feels like for me. It's right there in the nerve, and in some days it's really painful. Most days I sit at from 1 to 10. Most days I sit at a 3, which is very that's normal for me. I can function. I can do anything normal in that day. I'm on a medication for it. There is no cure for it. Sadly, there's only like one medication that responds to it, and that's initially how they diagnosed it. Uh, there's other medications they've tried over the years, but there's only one that actually helps with the pain. Now, when I say I set it a 3 and I can do it comfortably, once I start going above that 3, that's when it starts to get a little scary and it starts to kind of take me out of my comfort zone to where I'm not going to be functioning as much. If I get in a 4, that's where I'm on alert. If I'm on a 5, if I get to a 5, that's when it starts getting really painful. If I reach a 6, I'm done. I'm done. Like I say, I don't have any medication. If I reach a 6, I am bedbound. I'm bedbound from there. I have to be in a dark room. No noise, and there's a lot of triggers to it too, and that's a rough thing too. There's so many triggers that can cause my the head pain to get worse. Some days I almost feel like it's kind of as the wind blows, it triggers my pain. Uh, anything above that, anything above a 6, I can get reduced to tears. I remember when I spent a week in the hospital when this condition, and it came out of nowhere, by the way. I did not, I forgot to mention that. I thought I had a headache one day, but it was only on one side of my head. And over a couple of days, I started taking, just regular, over the counter medications that just headaches would normally respond to. And I thought it was weird because, okay, it's not responding to it. That's not normal. It's not normal. So my girlfriend, who is now my fiance, she took me to the ER. They ended up they ended up bringing me to the neuro unit, and over the next week they ran every test possible until the just everything they could think of. They went through it. To the second to last day there, someone came in and she was actually a med student. She wasn't the doctor. She wasn't, she was just one of the students that was there. Still, is meeting her requirements for med school. Second to last day, she came in when everyone else had tried everything. The neurologist, every specialist came in to see me. She said, "We're going to try this particular medicine on you, and if your pain responds to it, then we know what you have." They didn't. That was it. They were very cryptic about it. They didn't mention what I have. They didn't mention what the medicine was. They just said, "If we give this to you, we know what you have." And at that point, like the night before, I had finally reached a 10. And if anyone knows me, I have a high pain tolerance. I don't say I reached a 10 lightly. I started just bawling my eyes out. I was really just wailing and crying. And I remember at one point a nurse came in, and I wasn't trying to be rude. I really wasn't. I was just in so much pain. I screamed at the nurse and I said, "Please knock me out. Knock me out." It was that much pain to where I physically and mentally could not handle it anymore. So, second to last day, they gave me the medication. The next day, and this was at night, they gave me the medication. Boom. My head pain dropped to a 0. Like I had no head pain at all. And which, by the way, let me just throw this out there. I haven't felt a 0 in years. Like I said, most days I sit at a 3. The next day she came in, they questioned me, and they said, since the medication has responded to it, you have a very rare condition called hemicrania continua. Now, the neurologist there at the time, who had been on my case for the past week, she said it was very interesting because a lot of people came in to ask me questions, and they were all curious because I guess it's something, since it is so rare, not many people get to see it. And I'm not trying to make it sound like it's like 1 in a million. It's not that rare, and I can't remember the statistics, but the neurologist had stated to me it was only the second case she had ever seen in 30 years. So that's pretty much it for the conditions I suffer with. Um, all right, sorry, all right, I'm just almost repeating my notes. So please know, everybody, I'm not trying to be repetitive, but please know everything you're hearing here, hearing from me, it's coming from someone who suffers from the same or very similar things. And please know I will try to give you the most accurate information possible. And just as like a side note, please know that I'm not telling anyone to do anything. I'm not, telling people to go out and do this, or I'm not trying to give medical advice. I don't do anything like that. But I will tell you, I will give you tricks and tips on what works for me. And no matter what education I give you, please always never just take my word for it. Always do your own research as well. That's what I always try to do. I never take anything at face value. I mean, it can be the most accurate information possible, but it's always more fun to do your own research too. But my goal, like I said, I want to make the uncommon knowledge common. So that's why I'm doing what I do. So please, if you can, just help me in this journey. Like my video, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell for notifications, and if you can, just share the crap out of my videos. Help this content reach as many people as it can, so it can help as many people as I possibly can. Thank you all. I love you, and please just be positive. Be positive. Till next time, guys. Bye.